Everyone knew her as Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, but Irene Ryan was hiding something shocking. She was only 5 years older than the man who played her son-in-law. At 60, she lied to get the role because they said she looked too young. While earning $500,000 a year, she lived in a tiny house with broken furniture. She never had children, but spent her final days completely alone. The woman who made millions laugh died forgotten, and what happened to her house after death will break your heart. Irene Ryan was born as Jessie Irene Noble on October 17, 1902, in El Paso, Texas. Her father, James Noble, worked as a low-ranking Army sergeant at Fort Bliss. Her mother, Katie Masheri, had come all the way from Ireland, hoping for a better life. They didn't have much. They lived in a small home near downtown El Paso, and Irene was born right there, not in a hospital. Fort Bliss was growing fast back then because of the Mexican Revolution, which had already started in 1910. By 1915. Nearly 6,000 soldiers were stationed there, and it was a tense time. That military tension was part of Irene's early world. With her father's low pay and the rising conflict right across the border, the family struggled just to get by. Food wasn't always guaranteed. The chaos of the Mexican Revolution had crossed the border. El Paso wasn't just a town anymore, it had become a place full of refugees, revolutionaries, and danger. Violence came close. People like the Noble family had to rely on charity just to eat. Irene was still a child, but she felt real hunger. It stuck with her. It made her want something more out of life. It made her fight hard even as a little girl. The local shops were often empty, prices were high, and safety was never promised. On top of that, vigilante groups had formed. These were not safe times. Her family lived in tight quarters and shared spaces with others. That struggle, that need to survive, shaped Irene into someone tough and observant. She basically grew up alone. Her only sister, Anna, was born in 1885. That made her 17 years older. By the time Irene could talk, Anna had already moved out. So Irene lived like an only child, always surrounded by adults. She heard grown-up talk every day about the army, money troubles, and the war nearby. She learned to keep herself entertained. She learned to listen. She became sharp, independent, and mature beyond her age. She had no one to play with, but she paid attention. And all of that helped her later when she had to play complicated roles and perform on tough stages. She also began to crave attention and applause because she grew up without much of either. At age 11 in 1913, she finally had her first real taste of joy on stage. It happened in San Francisco at the Valencia Theater. She sang a song called Pretty Baby in a talent show and won first prize. They gave her $3, which would be around $98 today. But it wasn't the money that changed her. It was the sound of the crowd clapping. That sound filled her with something powerful. She suddenly knew this was her way out. Her mother didn't approve. Katie believed show business was dangerous, even evil. She once told Irene, "If you ever meet the devil, it'll be backstage." But Irene didn't listen. That $3 win was everything. It gave her a dream, and she wouldn't let go of it. When she was 14, Irene did something bold. She lied about her age to get into a California theater company. The law didn't allow anyone under 16 to work in theaters. So she told them she was older, and it worked. They hired her. That job became her first real step into the entertainment world. She knew the risk. If she was caught, she'd be thrown out, but she didn't get caught. She proved she could do the work, and she earned her place. That lie, small as it was, showed how far she'd go to escape the hunger and hardship. She knew too well. At 15 in 1917, she left high school with only 2 years finished. Her father had died in 1913, and her family needed help. She joined the Ed Redman Traveling Theater Troupe and hit the road. Her mother was against it at first, but someone convinced her. A man at Joyland Park in Sacramento said, "This kid's got talent." That was enough. By August 1918, Irene was back performing in El Paso with the troupe. Now 16, she had become one of their main stars. The show promised 1 hour and 90 minutes of cyclonic entertainment with wild lighting, costumes, and stage effects. Her life had fully turned. She wasn't a student anymore. She was a working actress. She stayed in the hard world of vaudeville, where the work was non-stop and the crowds were brutal. In San Francisco, she played silly characters with a sharp edge. She sang songs like "I'm Old Enough for a Little Loving" and "Sweet Babette." Her singing made people laugh and cheer, but the pressure was high dot at the same Valencia Theater where she once won $3. Performers who failed were yanked off stage with hooks. The crowd threw eggs and tomatoes at acts they didn't like. It was sink or swim. So Irene learned fast. She sharpened her timing. She became quick and clever. At just 15, people called her a chic soubrette, a stylish little star. Offstage, she kept working, studying music, and even Spanish. The theater world back then was full of rough men and loud crowds. Irene had to be tough. She once said she wouldn't get hit with garbage if she sang loud enough. That became her rule. Keep them entertained and you're safe. She stood just 5'12", but she had presence. She learned something strange about fame, too. She said actresses lost their mystery when they talked too much. By 1921, she was ready to go out on her own. She teamed up with a man named Johnny Ryder and formed a duo. They performed a show called The Biggest Liar in the World at the Texas Grand. She was just getting started, but the money was still awful. From 1917 to 1921, Irene was performing 8 shows a week for very little pay. If she got sick or missed a show, she'd be replaced without question. So she never missed. Even when she felt terrible, she showed up. She and the troupe lived simply, often sharing rooms and splitting meals. The productions were huge with lights, costumes, and effects, but the people behind them had barely enough to survive. Irene never forgot that, but the fear of being poor never left her. It's why even when she made it later in life, she always handled her money carefully. She moved constantly during those early years. Between 1917 and 1922, she lived in San Francisco, Sacramento, Phoenix, El Paso, San Jose, and finally St. Joseph, Missouri. She moved with each show, each new job. The Ed Redman Company sent her all over. She lived from a suitcase and stayed in cheap hotels. One time she visited a place with a fancy indoor pool near San Jose and called it a rare luxury. Most of the time there was nothing fancy. By 1920, she was back with her mother in San Francisco. Listed on the census a theater actress. She had no stable home, no steady friends, and no guarantee of money. But she kept performing. That constant movement trained her for everything that came next. In March 1922, at age 20, she married Tim Ryan, a 25-year-old comedian. Together, they became Tim and Irene, later known as Tim Ryan and Irene Noble. They built a comedy act based on silly misunderstandings. Just like George Burns and Gracie Allen, their timing was perfect. Vaudeville was booming, and stars could earn up to $100 a week, which is about $10,600 today. In only 2 years, they were headlining big theaters across America. The same little girl who once won $3 singing Pretty Baby was now a real star. But there was something strange about their act. On stage, Irene played the dumb, confused wife, and Tim was the smart one. always losing patience. But offstage, it was the opposite. Irene handled their money, their bookings, their contracts. She was the brains. Tim was relaxed and easygoing. He let her run everything. This twist caused tension. Irene hated pretending to be dumb while doing all the real work. Tim felt pressure trying to play the smart one when Irene was the one holding it all. Together, from 1935 to 1937, they made 11 short comedy films together and educational pictures in New York. The studio was known for cheap, fast work. They filmed each short in just 3 or 4 days, working up to 16 hours a day. Sets were minimal. Actors had to do their own stunts. Irene got hurt more than once, but didn't report it. She was afraid of losing jobs. Pay was also poor. They made just $150 to $200 per short, which is around $3,000 to $4,000 today. Still, their timing and chemistry got attention. Their big break came in summer 1936 when NBC asked them to replace Jack Benny on his radio show during his break. Benny's show had a huge audience. Around 28.6% of households listened every week. This was massive exposure, but it also brought stress. They had to memorize a full 30-minute script every week. The arguments during rehearsals became famous at NBC. On the recordings, you can even hear the tension in their voices. That pressure started to destroy their marriage. In 1942, after 20 years together, they divorced. They had no children, and no one ever explained why. Some thought it was their careers. Others thought maybe it wasn't a choice. Irene was heartbroken. She kept the name Ryan as if she couldn't let go. Their old vaudeville acts were hard to divide. The money wasn't much. Their film contracts were already over. After she divorced Tim Ryan in 1942, Irene didn't waste time feeling sorry for herself. She jumped into radio and found a new voice literally and emotionally. In 1946, she joined the Jack Carson Show on CBS. She played a candy store and library owner in a small town. And listeners couldn't get enough of her raspy voice. That voice had been shaped by years of heavy smoking, a habit that started during her long vaudeville days. It gave her a sound nobody else had, and it worked in her favor on the radio, even though it would later